My wife said I need space to find myself after 10 years of marriage. I gave her all the space she wanted by filing for divorce that same day. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. My wife of 10 years hit me with the classic, I need a break to figure things out speech on a random Sunday morning. What she didn't know was that I'd file for divorce that same afternoon and have the sheriff serve her papers at her affair partner's house 3 days later. Sometimes the universe just hands you the perfect opportunity to watch someone's face melt in real time. Grab some coffee because this is going to be a long one. Let me give you some background so this all makes sense. I'm Tyler, 37 years old, work in operations management for a logistics company here in Ohio. Been doing this for about 12 years now. Worked my way up from warehouse coordinator to running a team of 15 people. It's not glamorous work, but it pays well, keeps me challenged, and I'm actually pretty good at it. The kind of job where you solve problems all day, manage people's expectations, and try to keep supply chains running smoothly. Basically my personality and job form. Growing up, I watched my parents go through a brutal divorce when I was 14. Dad made decent money but kept lousy records. When things fell apart, it was a nightmare of hidden accounts and disputed assets. Took 3 years to finalize. They both came out bitter and broke, and I came out with a lifelong obsession with documentation and financial organization. Everything in my life has a backup. Every account has a paper trail. Every major purchase has a folder. People joke that I'm paranoid, but I prefer prepared. That preparation was about to pay off. I met Jenna back when we were both 25 at a friend's engagement party. She was working in pharmaceutical sales, had this laugh that carried across rooms, and could talk to literally anyone about anything. Walked up to me at the drinks table and started asking about my job like she was genuinely interested. Most people's eyes glaze over when you mention IT, but she asked follow-up questions. Wanted to know what problems I solved, what made it challenging, what I actually enjoyed about it. We clicked immediately. First date was dinner at this Italian place downtown. Third date was cooking dinner at my apartment, where we burned the garlic bread, but the pasta turned out great. By date 5, I knew I was in trouble. The good kind of trouble, or so I thought. She moved in with me after 8 months. Her lease was up, my apartment had space, and it just made sense. We got engaged on our 2-year anniversary during a trip to the coast. I proposed on the beach at sunset. She cried. I cried. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony. For the first few years, things were genuinely good. The kind of good where you can't believe you got this lucky. We bought a house together 7 years ago. A nice 3-bedroom place in the suburbs that we got for $340,000. Put down 60 grand between us, 30,000 each from our individual savings. We kept our finances mostly separate after that. Learned that lesson from watching my parents' messy divorce growing up. My car was mine, her car was hers, no joint credit cards. Her idea originally, actually, said she valued her financial independence, which in hindsight makes perfect sense for reasons I didn't understand at the time. The house became our project. Weekends spent at Home Depot, arguing over paint colors, learning how to install ceiling fans from YouTube tutorials. Normal married couple stuff. I built a deck in the backyard that took me 3 summers to get right. First attempt was a disaster. Second attempt was functional but ugly. Third attempt actually looked professional if you squinted. Jenna would bring me water while I worked, keep me company while I measured and cut. She planted a garden that first spring. Tomatoes, peppers, some herbs. Was really into it for about 2 months, then summer hit and she got busy. I took over watering duties without saying anything. Kept that garden alive for 3 more years. She never noticed. Should have been a sign. Kids were always maybe later for Jenna. First it was wanting to get established in careers, then enjoying freedom, then the house needing work, then the economy. Then it was just never the right time. I stopped bringing it up around year 6 because the conversation went nowhere. Looking back, that should have told me something. A woman who sees a future with you doesn't keep pushing the family conversation into some vague tomorrow. By year 8, we'd settled into that comfortable routine that either means you're content or you're slowly dying inside. Dinner together most nights. Weekends doing separate hobbies. She'd go to brunch with girlfriends, hit the gym. I'd work on projects or catch games with Ryan. We'd meet up in the evening, share a couch, watch something on streaming, go to bed, rinse and repeat. The intimacy had faded to almost nothing. Once a month if I initiated. I brought it up once. She got defensive, said I was pressuring her. So I stopped. We became roommates who occasionally remembered they used to be in love. I told myself this was just what long-term marriage looked like. The passion fades. The partnership remains. That's the trade-off, right? Wrong. The signs started about 3 months before the Sunday morning speech. Looking back, they were textbook obvious. But when it's your marriage, you explain away anything. Jenna started working late more often. 2, 3 nights a week with client dinners or meetings that ran long. Pharmaceutical sales is demanding, so this tracked. She'd come home around 9, say she'd already eaten, shower, and crash. I'd have dinner alone. Then came the phone thing. Constant texting with that specific smile people get when they're excited about someone. You know the smile. Angling the screen away when I walked by. Taking calls in other rooms, keeping the phone face down on every surface. I noticed new underwear appearing in her drawer. Matching sets, lacy stuff she wasn't wearing around me. The kind of thing you buy when you're impressing someone new. Our intimate life had flatlined. So who was it for? She joined a new gym. Started going 5 times a week. Lost weight, bought new clothes. I complimented the changes. She smiled distantly and said thanks. Her friend Megan was suddenly her new best friend. Megan was this single woman from the new gym. Mid-30s, never married, always posting on social media about living your best life and finding yourself and not settling for less than you deserve. Every piece of advice from Megan seemed to involve Jenna needing more independence, more freedom, more time away from our boring suburban existence. Girls' nights became weekly. Weekend trips became monthly. Megan thought Jenna worked too hard. Megan thought Jenna needed to focus on herself. Megan thought I was holding Jenna back from her full potential. Funny how the chronically single friend always has the strongest opinions about what's wrong with your marriage. Even funnier how wives always seem to take that advice seriously. I met Megan once at some group dinner thing. She looked at me like I was an obstacle to be managed rather than a person to be met. Smiled without meaning it, asked surface-level questions without listening to answers. I've been in enough corporate meetings to recognize when someone has already decided you're irrelevant. Megan had decided I was irrelevant to whatever she and Jenna had planned. But here's the thing about being a logical person. You can see all the evidence, recognize the pattern, connect every dot, and still convince yourself it doesn't mean what it obviously means. Because accepting the truth means your whole life is about to implode, and that's terrifying. So you find alternative explanations. She's stressed. She's going through a midlife thing. She just needs time to figure out her career. The gym friend is just helping her find confidence. The late nights are really just work. The underwear is for her own self-esteem. Classic denial dressed up as patience. Classic desperation dressed up as understanding. I was so committed to believing my marriage was fine that I ignored every sign screaming it was already over. Then came the Sunday morning that changed everything. It was a normal day, or what passed for normal by that point. I was sitting at the kitchen table reading news on my tablet, my coffee getting cold beside me because I'd gotten absorbed in some article about supply chain issues affecting the industry. Jenna was across the table scrolling her phone, doing that thing where she's physically present, but mentally somewhere else entirely. We'd been sitting in silence for probably 20 minutes. Comfortable silence, I would have told myself. Actually, just empty silence. Then she put the phone down and did this deep breath thing. The kind of breath people take before delivering news they know will upset someone. I'd seen that breath before, in performance reviews I'd conducted, in conversations with employees about to quit. It's the breath of someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say. She said my name and told me we needed to talk. I looked up. Her expression was serious, but not sad. That detail stuck with me immediately and hasn't left since. Whatever she was about to say, she wasn't torn up about it. She'd already processed it, already made peace with it, already moved past the difficult emotions. This was just the delivery. The decision had been made long ago. She started going on about doing a lot of thinking about us, about where we were, about what she really wanted out of life. Talked about feeling stuck, feeling like she'd lost herself somewhere along the way, not knowing who she was anymore outside of our marriage. The kind of vague language that sounds deep but actually says nothing. Then she dropped the bomb. She needed a break from us. Time to figure things out. Space to think clearly without the pressure of daily life together. Maybe a few weeks. Maybe a month. She wasn't sure how long. She reached across the table and took my hand while she said it, like this was some tender moment we were sharing, instead of her detonating a decade of marriage. Her eyes were wet, but no tears fell. Performative emotion. Told me it didn't mean she didn't love me. She just needed to figure out if this was still what she wanted. If this was still what she wanted. 10 years. A house. A life built together. Plans we'd made. Promises we'd exchanged. And she needed to figure out if she still wanted it. Like I was a subscription service she wasn't sure was worth renewing for another year. I stared at her while my brain processed what was actually happening beneath the careful language. Here's what she thought was happening. She'd found someone else, wanted to test drive that relationship without the guilt of officially cheating, and needed me to stay parked in the garage as her backup plan. The break gave her permission. If the new thing worked out, she'd come back in a month and ask for a divorce on her terms, having already transitioned emotionally. If it didn't work out, she'd return to the understanding husband who gave her space, and I'd be too grateful for her return to ask questions about where she'd actually been. That's the break playbook. Every guy who's been through it knows it. It's not complicated. It's having your cake and eating it too, while your spouse sits at home like an idiot, waiting to see if they're still wanted. Keeping your options open while pretending to be soul-searching. Something in me clicked off at that moment. Not anger, not hurt, not even disappointment. Just a switch flipping from invested to done. And like a circuit breaker tripping. 10 years of marriage, and she wanted to pause us while she figured out her options. Cool. I had options too. She just didn't know it yet. I told her okay. Take her time. She blinked, visibly surprised. Asked if I was really okay with this. Her voice had a weird edge to it, like my calm response wasn't in the script she'd rehearsed. I squeezed her hand and told her I wanted her to be happy. If she needed time, she should take it. My voice was steady because I meant every word, just not the way she thought I meant it. Her whole face lit up like I'd just given her permission to do exactly what she'd planned to do anyway. The relief was almost offensive. She actually thanked me, said she'd been so worried about how I'd react, told me she'd stay at Megan's place for a while, kissed my cheek at the door after packing a bag with 2 weeks' worth of clothes, her laptop, her toiletries, that fancy new underwear she thought I hadn't noticed. She said she'd text me, that we could talk in a few days. I told her to take her time, meant every word, just not the way she understood it. The door closed behind her. I listened to her car start in the driveway. Back out, drive away. I waited exactly 30 seconds to make sure she was actually gone and not coming back for something she forgot. Then I grabbed my phone and called Ryan. Ryan's my buddy from college. We've been friends for 15 years, pledged the same fraternity, stood in each other's weddings. We play poker twice a month with some other guys from school, and he happens to be a divorce attorney at a well-respected firm downtown. One of those coincidences that suddenly becomes very useful when your wife announces she needs a break to find herself at some other man's house. He answered on the second ring, asked what was up, probably expecting me to ask about poker night or something normal. I told him I needed to file for divorce. Today. Asked how fast we could move. Long pause on his end. He pointed out it was Sunday. His office was closed. I said tomorrow then. First thing. How fast could we file? He told me if we had everything ready, he could file the petition Monday morning. Then asked what happened, said Jenna. And I seemed solid the last time he saw us together. I laughed at that. Seemed solid. Everyone seems solid until they don't. Explained that Jenna asked for a break an hour ago to figure things out. That she was supposedly staying with Megan. That I wasn't stupid and knew exactly what break meant. Another pause, longer this time. Then he just said yeah, he understood, and we'd handle it. Told me to come to his office at 9 the next morning, bring financial documents, property records, everything related to assets and debts. I told him I already had it organized. He laughed and said of course I did. That was the operations manager in me. Everything documented, everything filed, everything ready for exactly this kind of situation. My parents' divorce had taught me to prepare for the worst even while hoping for the best. I spent the rest of that Sunday gathering documents from my home office, bank statements from the past 2 years, mortgage papers with all the refinancing records, car titles for both vehicles, retirement account statements, records of every major purchase, tax returns, the joint savings account summary, even the receipts from when we'd bought furniture together. Like I said, we kept things mostly separate, so the financial picture was pretty clear. House in both names, purchased 7 years ago. Her car, my car. Her 401k, my 401k. Joint savings account with about $40,000 in it from automatic transfers we both made. One joint credit card we rarely used that had maybe $700 on it. The settlement would be straightforward. Dividing things cleanly was going to be easy. The serving of papers, however, was going to be beautiful. That night I slept better than I had in months. Weird, right? My marriage was ending and I felt like a weight had been lifted. Because the uncertainty was over. No more wondering if she was cheating. No more explaining away signs. No more pretending things were fine when they obviously weren't. The waiting for the other shoe to drop was done. Now it was just execution. And I'm very good at execution. Monday morning, 9 sharp, I was in Ryan's office with a file folder organized by category. He walked me through everything with the professional detachment I needed. Ohio's a no-fault divorce state, so we didn't need to prove adultery or anything else. Irreconcilable differences would be the grounds. Nobody's fault, just didn't work out, please sign here. Given our financial situation, asset division should be clean. House had equity we'd split according to standard formulas. Retirement accounts from during the marriage would be divided per state law. No kids meant no custody complications, no child support, no co-parenting schedules. No significant income disparity since she made almost as much as me meant no alimony would be required. Ryan said it should be straightforward. Maybe even amicable if she didn't fight it. I told him she would fight it. He asked why. Because she wasn't supposed to file. She was supposed to have her break, test drive the other guy, then come back and either leave me gracefully or return to the marriage like nothing happened. I wasn't supposed to take the decision away from her. I wasn't supposed to have a spine. Ryan nodded slowly and said he understood the dynamic, said he'd seen it before, then said we'd file first thing Tuesday morning and the sheriff would serve her within a few days, depending on where she was staying. That's when I pulled out my phone and showed him something interesting. See, we'd had Find My Friends enabled for years. Safety thing for when one of us traveled for work. If her plane was delayed, I'd know not to wait up. If my conference ran late, she wouldn't work. We'd never turned it off because we'd never had a reason to. And Jenna apparently forgot it existed. According to the app, she wasn't at Megan's apartment. She was at an address across town. A house in a nice neighborhood. Same address she'd been at every single night since Sunday when she'd left for her break. Ryan pulled up county property records on his computer. The house was owned by someone named Brandon Hayes, 41 years old. Single. Worked in finance according to a quick search. I said the name didn't ring any bells. She'd never mentioned anyone named Brandon. Ryan asked if I wanted him to dig into this guy, find out more about who he was and how long this might have been going on. I said not yet. Didn't matter who he was or how they met. What mattered was what happened next. When the sheriff served her, I wanted it done at that address. Not at Megan's where she claimed to be. At Brandon's house where she actually was. Ryan grinned and said he'd make it happen. The petition was filed Tuesday at 9:03 a.m. Grounds listed as irreconcilable differences. I asked for equitable division of assets, fair split of house equity, standard division of retirement accounts per state formula. Nothing crazy, nothing vindictive, just done. The sheriff's deputy went to serve her on Wednesday afternoon. Ryan gave them the address where she actually was, not where she said she'd be. I knew because Ryan called me at 2:47 p.m. with an update. He said she'd been served, and then he gave me the details because he knew I'd want them. The guy answered the door. Brandon Hayes himself, apparently confused why a sheriff's deputy was at his house in the middle of a Wednesday. The deputy asked if Jenna was there. Brandon said yes, seemed uncertain about what was happening. Let the deputy into the foyer. Jenna came down from upstairs in what was clearly loungewear. Comfortable clothes. Clothes you wear when you're at home. Clothes that made it very clear this wasn't a visit, but a residence. The deputy handed her the papers. Explained she was being served with a divorce petition filed by her husband. Ryan said the deputy reported her face went completely white, like all the blood just drained out. She stood there holding the papers, not moving, not speaking, while Brandon asked what was going on and she didn't answer. I felt nothing when Ryan told me this. No satisfaction, no vindication, just a kind of empty calm. It was done. The message was delivered. Now we'd see how she responded. Ryan asked if she'd tried to call me yet. I told him I didn't know. My phone had been off since Sunday night. I'd turn it on when I was ready. No rush. Smart, he said. She was going to lose it. Thursday morning, I finally turned my phone back on. Had to face it eventually. 23 missed calls from Jenna. 15 texts. 3 voicemails I didn't bother listening to because I could imagine the content. The texts were a journey through the 5 stages of grief, compressed into about 18 hours. Started with confusion. What is this? Why did someone serve me divorce papers? This must be a mistake, right? Then panic. Tyler, answer your phone. Please, we need to talk about this. This isn't what I wanted. Then anger. How could you do this? I asked for space, not a divorce. You're being completely insane. You're overreacting. We need to talk. Then negotiation. Can we please just discuss this? I know I handled things badly, but this is too much. We can work this out. Then something interesting. She said, Brandon told her I must have had her followed and that it was illegal. That I was violating her privacy. Brandon. So that was his name confirmed. And apparently he was already coaching her on how to spin this. Already positioning them as victims of my unreasonable behavior, rather than people who got caught. I sent back one text. Just one. Told her she wanted to figure out what she really wanted. I was helping her figure it out without me as the backup plan. Told her my lawyer was Ryan Patterson at Patterson Associates. Direct all future communication through him. Her response came in seconds. She never said divorce. This wasn't what she wanted. I was ruining everything. I texted back 3 characters. Me? Then I blocked her number. She showed up at the house Friday evening. I watched on the doorbell camera as she pulled into the driveway. Sat in her car for a few minutes, probably working up courage, then walked to the front door. She tried her key. It didn't work. I'd had the locks changed Wednesday morning, first thing after the papers were served. Locksmith came while I was at work, rekeyed everything, left the new keys with my neighbor who I trusted. She stood there for a good 2 minutes, just staring at the door like it had personally betrayed her. Tried the key again. Slower this time, like maybe she'd done it wrong. Still didn't work. The realization crossed her face. Then she started ringing the bell. Over and over, that annoying two-tone chime echoing through the empty house. Called out my name. Said she knew I was home. That my car was in the garage. That we needed to talk. That I was being ridiculous. I was home. Sitting on the couch watching her on my phone screen. Didn't answer. Didn't move. Just watched. She rang for maybe 5 minutes. Then stood there. Then sat down on the porch steps. Then got up and paced. Then went back to the car and sat there for another 20 minutes. Probably trying to figure out her next move. Probably texting Brandon or Megan for advice. Then she drove away. Ryan called Saturday to say her lawyer had made contact. Some guy named Mitchell from a mid-sized firm. Decent reputation, nothing special. She was contesting nothing specific yet, just expressing that the divorce filing was premature and unnecessarily aggressive, and his client wished to explore reconciliation options. I told Ryan no reconciliation, proceed with the divorce. He asked if I was sure, said this was the point where most people at least had a conversation, even if just for closure. I asked him what exactly we'd discuss. She asked for a break to figure out what she wanted while staying with another man. What exactly was there to work on? She figured out what she wanted. It wasn't me. Now I was figuring out what I wanted. It wasn't her. Ryan said he'd relay the message. The next few weeks were procedural. Discovery requests, financial disclosures, the boring machinery of ending a legal partnership. Our situation was pretty straightforward since we'd kept things separate, which was ironic because her insistence on financial independence was now making it easier to financially separate. House had equity. Retirement accounts had predictable balances. No hidden assets, no complicated business interests, no debts I didn't know about. Just two people untangling 10 years of shared life, line item by line item. Mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday about 6 weeks after the initial filing. During those intervening weeks, I heard things through mutual friends. The grapevine works even when you're not tending it. Turns out Jenna and Brandon's relationship had soured fast once they were actually living together. The excitement of sneaking around, of stolen moments and forbidden attraction, didn't survive the transition to domestic routine. Suddenly they were arguing about whose turn it was to load the dishwasher. Suddenly his habits were annoying instead of endearing. Suddenly she was realizing he was just a regular guy, not some escape fantasy. Brandon had apparently asked her to start paying rent after a few weeks. She'd been staying there for free, eating his food, using his utilities, and he finally brought up the financial imbalance. She didn't take it well. They had a fight. She moved out, ended up at Megan's place for real this time. The friend who'd encouraged all of this was now stuck dealing with the fallout. Karma sometimes has a sense of humor. Jenna had also been working the narrative with our social circle. Her version of events: I abandoned her, filed for divorce without warning, refused to even discuss working on our issues, was being vindictive about assets out of pure spite. Poor Jenna, blindsided by her cruel husband who wouldn't even give her a chance to work on things. Poor Jenna, just trying to find herself and getting punished for it. Some people bought it. The ones who didn't know us well, who only heard her side, who wanted to believe the woman because that's their default. A few of her work friends apparently thought I was a monster. But most people who knew us both could do basic math. Wife asks for break, immediately moves in with mystery man, husband files for divorce. Not exactly a complicated equation. Mediation day arrived. We sat in a conference room at a neutral attorney's office. Beige walls, fake plant in the corner, conference table that had seen 1,000 arguments. Me and Ryan on one side, notepads and folders organized, Jenna and Mitchell on the other, looking less prepared. A mediator named Harold ran the show. Older guy, patient demeanor, probably seen every possible version of this. First time I'd seen Jenna in person since before she left for her break. She looked tired, thinner, but not in a healthy way. The confidence she'd had when she delivered that Sunday morning speech was completely gone. Now she just looked like someone whose plan had completely fallen apart and was still trying to figure out where it went wrong. She tried to catch my eye across the table. I looked at Harold instead. Harold started with the easy stuff. Vehicles. We each kept our own cars. Easy. Done. Next item. Retirement accounts. State law required splitting the marital portion, meaning whatever was earned during the marriage got divided regardless of whose account it sat in. Jenna had about $78,000 in her 401k. I had $112,000 in mine. The difference would be equalized according to the formula. She'd get some of mine. I'd technically get some of hers. It would wash out relatively close to even after the calculation. Then we got to the house. This is where it got interesting. We'd bought it 7 years ago for $340,000, put down $60,000 combined as a down payment. Current market value based on recent comps was around $485,000. We still owed $240,000 on the mortgage. That meant $245,000 in equity to divide. Ryan laid out my position clearly. I wanted to sell the house, pay off the mortgage, split the remaining equity 50-50. I had no interest in buying out her portion and keeping the place. Too many memories. I wanted a clean break. Mitchell jumped in and said Jenna wanted to keep the house. She was willing to buy out my share of the equity. Harold looked at Jenna and asked if she had financing in place for that. She nodded and said she'd been pre-approved for a mortgage. Ryan raised an eyebrow and asked what amount she'd been approved for. Mitchell handed over a pre-approval letter from some regional bank. It showed Jenna approved for a loan up to $260,000. Ryan did the math out loud for the room. To keep the house, she'd need to pay off the existing $240,000 mortgage plus buy out half of the $245,000 equity. That was $122,500 owed to me. Total financing needed, $362,500. But she was only approved for $260,000. That left her $102,500 short. The room got quiet. Mitchell cleared his throat and said his client had family resources that could potentially cover the gap. Ryan looked directly at Jenna and asked if she actually had $102,500 in cash or confirmed financing for that amount. Not potentially. Actually. Jenna looked at Mitchell. He looked uncomfortable. Said they were working on it. Her parents were considering helping. So no, Ryan said. She didn't have it. He turned to Harold and said we'd stick with selling the house. Neither party had the means to buy out the other fairly. Jenna spoke up then. First time she'd said anything directly, breaking the careful protocol of letting lawyers talk. Told the room she didn't want to sell. Called it her home. I looked at her for the first time since we'd sat down. Told her it was our home. But she left it. Wanted to stay away permanently with Brandon. Now that didn't work out, and she wanted the house back. That's not how this works. She flinched at Brandon's name. Probably didn't expect me to say it out loud. Harold held up his hands and reminded everyone to stay productive. Explained to Jenna that if she couldn't buy out her husband's equity, the house would need to be sold. That was standard procedure in these situations. Nothing personal, just math. She snapped that this was ridiculous, that I was doing this to punish her. I kept my voice level, told her I was doing this because I wanted my equity out. I'd put money into that house, put time into that house, put work into that house, and I wasn't subsidizing her life anymore. I looked at Harold and said we should sell the house. 50-50 split after the mortgage was paid. Listed within 30 days. Harold made notes and said he was marking the house as unresolved pending Jenna's ability to secure financing. If she couldn't produce the $102,500 within 30 days, we'd list the property. We moved through the smaller items after that. Furniture, which neither of us cared enough to fight over. Joint savings account with $40,200, which we'd split down the middle. The joint credit card with a $700 balance that we'd each pay half to close out. At the end, Harold summarized. We agreed on most items. The house was the only sticking point. Jenna had 30 days to secure financing for a buyout. If she couldn't, we'd list and split proceeds. Everyone nodded. In the parking lot afterward, Ryan was upbeat. Said she'd never get the financing. Nobody in her family had that kind of cash lying around based on what we knew, and no bank would approve a second loan to cover a gap that big on her income alone. I said good. Just wanted this done. He said a few more months max. He was right. Jenna didn't get the financing. Her parents couldn't loan her $100,000. Probably didn't have it to give even if they wanted to. No bank would approve the additional amount. She tried for 3 weeks, calling every lender she could find, before finally admitting through her lawyer that she couldn't make it work. The house listed 33 days after mediation. Real estate market was decent that season. Not crazy, but moving steadily. We priced it at $479,000 to sell relatively fast without leaving money on the table. Got an offer in 11 days. $472,000, only $7,000 under asking. Clean offer with pre-approved financing and a quick close timeline. I accepted immediately. Jenna tried to argue through Mitchell that we should wait for a better offer, hold out for more money, maybe get closer to asking price. But the listing agreement required both of us to agree to reject offers, and I wasn't rejecting anything. I wanted out. The sale closed 6 weeks later. Standard timeline, no complications. After paying off the $238,000 remaining mortgage, closing costs, and realtor fees, we netted $218,000, split 50-50, $109,000 each. The divorce decree was finalized 2 weeks after the house closed. Judge Morrison signed it without ceremony in a routine Tuesday afternoon session. No alimony ordered. Clean asset split. Both parties responsible for their own debts. Marriage dissolved. Done. I got my portion of the house money on a Thursday. Direct deposited from the title company into my savings account. Weird seeing that number in my balance. 10 years of marriage reduced to $109,000 and some retirement account adjustments. A whole decade. Quantified and divided like splitting a restaurant check. Found a decent apartment near my office within a week. 1 bedroom, modern building, nice gym on the first floor that I might actually use. Leased it and moved in over a weekend. My brother drove down to help. We ordered pizza and assembled furniture and hung the TV on the wall. He asked if I was doing okay. I told him yeah, meant it too. The anger I'd expected to feel never really materialized. Or maybe it came and went so fast during those first few weeks that I didn't register it properly. What I felt mostly was relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months, maybe years, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and finally got to exhale. The uncertainty was worse than the ending. The ending was just logistics. Heard through the grapevine that Jenna was also in an apartment now. Smaller place, further from her work. Not as nice a neighborhood. She'd apparently tried getting back together with Brandon after the divorce was final, maybe thinking the grass really was greener once the pressure of the divorce was off. But he'd started seeing someone else by then. The new exciting guy had already moved on to a newer, more exciting option. Funny how that works when you're the other woman who suddenly becomes the main woman. The thrill goes away. She'd been working the victim narrative hard, telling mutual friends her version of events, how I'd stolen her life by not giving her a chance to fix things, how I was cold and vindictive, how I refused to even have a conversation. One friend, Lauren, called me about it a few months after everything was finalized. Said Jenna was claiming I bailed on the marriage without even trying to work on things. I asked Lauren what exactly I was supposed to work on. Jenna asked for a break to stay with another man. What was there to fix? What conversation was I supposed to have? Lauren paused. Said when I put it that way, she could see my point. Exactly. I didn't hate Jenna. That was the weird part. You'd think after everything, after the betrayal and the lies and the manipulation, I'd feel some burning resentment, some desire to see her fail. But honestly, I didn't feel much about her at all anymore. The woman I'd spent a decade with was just someone I used to know. Someone who'd made choices and lived with consequences. I'd made mine in response. That was the whole story. 3 months after the divorce was final, I was sitting in my new apartment on a Saturday morning. Coffee in hand, comfortable silence, sunlight coming through the windows I'd picked specifically for the morning light. Nowhere I had to be, nobody I had to check in with, just me and my own space and my own life. My phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jenna, using a new number since I'd blocked her old one. She said she knew we weren't supposed to contact each other, but she wanted to say she was sorry for everything, that she'd handled things badly, been selfish and stupid, hadn't appreciated what we had. She didn't expect forgiveness, but needed me to know she regretted how it all went down. Hoped I was doing well. I read it twice. Thought about responding. Decided against it. Deleted the message. Blocked the new number. 6 months post-divorce now, and life looks completely different. Got promoted at work. Senior operations manager, corner office. Team of 22 people reporting to me. My boss pulled me aside after the announcement and said he'd noticed my focus had sharpened over the past year. Funny how that works when you're not spending mental energy wondering if your wife is cheating. The apartment's fully set up now. Bought a new couch, a proper bed frame, put up some art on the walls. My brother visited last month and said the place actually looks like a grown man lives there. Even got a decent coffee maker. One of those pour-over setups I always wanted, but Jenna said was too complicated for our kitchen. Started playing poker with Ryan's group again. Every other Thursday at rotating houses. Last month I took home $300 and 0 complaints. The guys have been solid through all this. Nobody brings up Jenna unless I do, which I don't. Hit the gym 4 days a week now. Down 15 pounds from the divorce weight, which apparently is a thing that happens when you stop stress-eating dinner alone every night. Ran a 10K last month. First race since college. Finished middle of the pack, but finished, which is more than I could say 6 months ago. As for Jenna, the updates kept trickling in whether I wanted them or not. Brandon got engaged to someone else in February. Posted it all over social media, apparently. Jenna found out through mutual friends and had some kind of meltdown at work. Took a week off for personal reasons. Her apartment lease came up for renewal, and she couldn't afford the increase. Moved back in with her parents at 37 years old. Her mom ran into my mom at the grocery store and made some comment about how things didn't work out the way anyone expected. My mom just smiled and said nothing, which is the most savage response possible from a Midwestern woman. Jenna's job put her on a performance improvement plan. Apparently, the finding herself phase had some impact on her sales numbers. Lost 2 major accounts. The pharmaceutical industry is small and word gets around. Lauren told me Jenna asked about me a few weeks ago. Wanted to know if I was seeing anyone, how I was doing, if I ever talked about her. Lauren said she told her the truth. I seemed happy, I was doing well, and no, I never mentioned her. That's the thing about burning your life down to chase something more. Sometimes you end up with less. A lot less. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.